The Alpha rejected his fated mate, but everything changed when the ruthless vampire king claimed her. The grand hall of Silvermoon Pack smelled of pine and ash. Massive chandeliers cast flickering shadows across the polished marble floor as pack members gathered in hushed clusters, their eyes darting between the dais and the young woman standing alone in the center. Sophia's heart hammered against her ribs like a caged bird desperate for escape. The rejection ceremony had been called 3 days ago. 3 days of whispered conversations, pitying glances, and the unbearable weight of knowing exactly what was coming. 3 days of watching her future crumble before it had even begun. She'd felt the bond the moment she turned 18. It was like someone had lit a fire in her chest, warm, consuming, pulling her toward a destination she didn't consciously know. She'd followed that pull to the training grounds where Marcus stood, his dark eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. The Alpha, the most powerful werewolf in 3 territories, and he was hers. Except he wasn't. Sophia Winters. Marcus's voice cut through the silence like a blade. He descended the dais with measured steps, his black suit immaculate, his shoulders broad enough to block out the light behind him. Even now, hating what he was about to do, he was beautiful in that dangerous way that made her stomach twist. She lifted her chin. She wouldn't cry, not here, not in front of everyone. I, Marcus Ashford, Alpha of Silvermoon Pack, hereby reject you as my fated mate. The words felt like physical blows. Sophia had known they were coming, had braced herself for them, but hearing them aloud was different. It was final. It was real. Around the hall, some of the younger wolves gasped. An older woman, the previous Alpha's sister, looked away in embarrassment. Marcus's jaw clenched. She could see he didn't want to do this, but he continued anyway. You are not suitable to be the Lunar of this pack. You are human, you are weak. You would be a liability to everything we've built. The words shouldn't have hurt as much as they did. She wasn't surprised. Humans had never been accepted in the supernatural world, not really. They were tolerated, permitted to live on the edges of their society, but never truly welcomed, never truly valued. She'd always known this might happen. What she hadn't known was that it would feel like dying. From this moment forward, you are severed from this pack and from me. You have until dawn to gather your belongings and leave Silvermoon territory. You are no longer welcome here. Sophia's hand trembled at her side. Her throat felt tight, her vision blurring at the edges. The rejection had severed something fundamental inside her, that warm, pulsing connection that had tied her to Marcus and his pack. It was like losing a limb, except the limb had been part of her soul. She opened her mouth to speak, but what could she say? Nothing would change his mind. Nothing had changed it in the 3 days of negotiations her mother had desperately attempted. The Alpha had made his decision. Sophia turned and walked toward the exit, her back straight, refusing to let them see her break. The weight of hundreds of eyes followed her, but she didn't turn around. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her fall apart. The autumn night was cold when she stepped outside. October wind bit at her skin as she made her way back to the small house her mother had rented in town, just beyond pack territory. They'd come to Silvermoon hopeful, thinking that maybe this pack would be different, that maybe her fated bond would mean something. She'd been naive. By the time she reached the house, Sophia's face was wet with tears she hadn't felt falling. Her mother was waiting on the porch, her silhouette framed by the soft light spilling from inside. Oh, sweetheart, her mother whispered, pulling her into an embrace. Sophia broke then, her entire body shaking with sobs. She'd been rejected, cast out. She was alone in a world where she'd never truly belonged, and now she never would. She didn't know that everything was about to change. She didn't know that fate wasn't finished with her yet. 3 weeks had passed since the rejection ceremony. Sophia had settled into a quiet apartment in the city, working at a small bookstore on 5th Avenue. The job paid barely enough to cover rent and groceries, but it was honest work, and more importantly, it kept her mind occupied. Most nights, she could almost convince herself that she was fine, that the hollow ache in her chest was something she could live with, that being severed from her fated mate wasn't the worst thing that could happen to her. The worst thing came on a Thursday night in late October. She was closing up the bookstore, running through the familiar routine of counting the register and locking the windows when she felt it. A strange, prickling sensation at the back of her neck. Predatory, watching. Sophia looked up from the register. 3 men stood in the poetry aisle watching her with eyes that glowed red in the dim light. Vampires. She'd read enough books to know the look of them, the unnatural grace, the cold beauty, the hunger. Her heart jumped into her throat. She'd never actually encountered vampires before. The vampire clans and werewolf packs maintained an uneasy truce, rarely venturing into each other's territories. "Can I help you?" Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. The man in the center stepped forward. He was tall, with dark hair and sharp features that belonged to a marble sculpture rather than a living being. His suit was clearly expensive, tailored to perfection. "I'm looking for something," he said, his accent old European. "A human girl, brunette, about this tall." He gestured to indicate her height. She should smell like wolf, but only faintly. A rejected mate. Sophia's blood turned to ice. "That's not really a good recommendation," she tried, backing toward the counter. "There are thousands of rejected mates in the world." "Not like you," the vampire smiled, and she saw the fangs. "You have a very specific scent, very particular. We've been looking for you for weeks." She'd made it 2 steps toward the door when they moved. They were impossibly fast, cutting off her escape. The vampire in front grabbed her arm, his grip cold as death, and she felt something sharp press against her neck. Sophia opened her mouth to scream, but a sound cut through the bookstore, a roar that shook the very foundations of the building. The vampire holding her paused. His friends went rigid. The pressure against her neck released slightly, and Sophia gasped, her eyes going wide. The store's front window exploded inward in a shower of glass. A man stepped through the shattered glass, and Sophia's entire body reacted to his presence in a way that had nothing to do with fear. He was devastatingly beautiful in the way of something dangerous and ancient. His hair was pure silver, his skin pale as moonlight, and his eyes were a color she'd never seen before. A swirling amber gold that seemed to contain entire universes. He wore a black coat that fell to his ankles and moved like smoke around his body. "I suggest you release her," the newcomer said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute command. "Immediately." The vampire holding her let go so quickly she stumbled forward. The 3 red-eyed men backed away, their expressions shifting from predatory to fearful. The silver-haired man hadn't moved, hadn't raised his voice, and yet they looked at him the way prey looked at a predator. "Your Majesty," one of them whispered. "Leave," the silver-haired man commanded. "Return to your territories and inform whoever sent you that this human is under my protection. If I find out you've been hunting her again, I will make sure your deaths are slow enough that you'll regret every century of your immortal lives." The vampires didn't need to be told twice. They vanished into the night like shadows. Sophia and the silver-haired stranger were alone. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice suddenly gentle though no less commanding. "No, I'm fine." She looked up at him, trying to steady her breathing. "Who are you?" He smiled, and it was like watching a glacier melt. "My name is Adrian Nightbane. I am the Vampire King." He reached out, his cold fingers brushing a strand of hair from her face. "And you, my dear, are my fated mate." Sophia's world tilted on its axis. That's not possible," she whispered. "I'm already bonded. I was bonded, but the rejection..." "The rejection severed the bond with that pathetic wolf," Adrian said, his eyes studying her face with an intensity that made her feel like he could see into her very soul. "But it didn't remove the possibility for a new bond. And fate, it seems, has a very particular sense of humor. You are mine, Sophia Winters, and I am yours." She should have been terrified, she should have run. Instead, she felt that warm fire ignite in her chest again, but this time it was different, deeper, darker, more consuming. "Come with me," Adrian whispered, extending his hand. "Let me show you what it means to truly belong somewhere." Sophia took his hand, and everything changed. Adrian's mansion was built into the side of a mountain, hidden behind illusion spells and natural geography. Towers of black stone rose against the night sky, connected by bridges that seemed to float in the air. Gargoyles perched on ledges, their eyes glowing as if alive. It was the kind of place that belonged to nightmares, beautiful and terrible. But it became home. Sophia woke in silk sheets the color of midnight, in a bedroom larger than the entire first floor of her mother's house. Servants brought her meals on silver platters. Adrian gave her the run of the mansion, Every room except one, a chamber in the lower levels that was sealed with powerful magic. "In time," he promised when she asked about it, "in time you'll understand everything." For a month, Sophia lived in a dreamlike state. Adrian was attentive and generous. He gave her a library that made her forget to eat. He taught her the history of the vampire world, centuries of bloodshed and politics that made werewolf pack drama seem quaint by comparison. He held her in the dark hours before dawn and told her stories of his long life. He also never let her leave the mansion. "For your protection," he insisted when she asked about visiting the city. "There are those who would use you against me. I cannot risk it." She didn't argue. The bond between them had solidified, and with it came a compulsion to comply with his wishes. She'd read about fated mates in the books she borrowed from his library, about the pull between two halves of the same soul. This was stronger than she'd felt with Marcus, more all-consuming. But it was also beginning to feel like a cage. On the 42nd night, Sophia decided to explore the lower levels of the mansion. She told herself it was curiosity, but something deeper was driving her, an instinct, almost a warning that something wasn't right. The sealed chamber was at the very bottom of the mountain, behind a door so massive it took her combined strength and magic to open it. Adrian had given her access to his power reserves, a privilege that should have made her feel more bonded to him, but instead made her feel complicit in something she didn't understand. The door swung open to reveal a chamber that made her blood run cold. Bodies, dozens of them, preserved in magical stasis hanging from chains. Women mostly, their skin pale and marked with bite scars. Their eyes were empty, still alive but not conscious, not present in any meaningful way. Sophia's hand flew to her mouth. "I can explain." Adrian's voice came from behind her, and she spun around to find him standing in the doorway, his beautiful face suddenly predatory. "What have you done?" she whispered. "What I've had to do to survive." He stepped into the chamber and the light seemed to die around him. "I'm over 3,000 years old, Sophia. Do you know what that's like? Do you know how many times I've had to start over? How many wars I've fought? How many lovers I've buried?" She backed away from him, her mind reeling. The rejection bond. "You didn't just find me by chance, did you?" Adrian's silence was answer enough. "How long?" she demanded. "How long have you been hunting me specifically?" "Since your 18th birthday." His eyes were filled with something that might have been regret or might have been hunger. "We've had you watched since your mother took you to Silvermoon. I knew the wolf would reject you. They always do with humans, especially humans with your bloodline." "My bloodline," Sophia's voice rose. "What are you talking about?" Adrian moved toward her, his movements fluid and hypnotic. "Your father wasn't fully human, love. He was a half-blood vampire on his father's side. It's rare, but it happens. It makes you compatible with our kind in ways that pure humans could never be. It makes you capable of bearing a vampire's child." The words hit her like a physical blow. "No, my father was human," my mother said. "Your mother lied to protect you. Or perhaps she was lied to herself. It doesn't matter now." Adrian reached out to touch her face and she slapped his hand away. His eyes flashed with anger. "You are exactly what I've been searching for. A human with enough supernatural blood to survive the bonding process, fertile, capable of giving me an heir." Sophia ran. She bolted past Adrian, racing up the stairs, her panic fueling her speed. Behind her she heard him laugh, a sound without warmth or humanity. "You can't escape," he called. "The mansion is sealed. Every door will lead you back to me. You are mine, Sophia. The bond ensures it. You'll come back to my chambers eventually, and when you do..." She didn't hear the rest. She was already running through hallways that seemed to shift and change, through rooms that appeared and disappeared. The bond between them was a tether, pulling at her, compelling her to return to submit. But Sophia had survived rejection by one supernatural being. She wasn't about to become a prisoner to another. She was searching for a way out when she heard something that made her pause. Voices shouting her name, the sound of something crashing through stone. "Sophia," a familiar voice roared. "Where are you?" It couldn't be. She'd felt his pain when she was bonded to him, had experienced the emptiness when he severed their connection. But that voice was undeniably Marcus's. She ran toward the sound, toward the wolf she'd once loved, wondering what had brought the Alpha to the Vampire King's mansion. She didn't wonder long. She burst through a doorway into the main chamber and stopped dead. Marcus stood there, his body half shifted, his eyes blazing gold. Behind him came at least 20 wolves, all in various states of transformation. And everywhere else, vampires in full battle form, their eyes glowing red, their fangs extended. Adrian stood at the center, looking almost amused. "The wolf returns," Adrian mused. "How touching. I assume you want your rejected mate back." Marcus's eyes found Sophia, and she saw something flicker in them, guilt, regret, and something else. Something that looked like shame. "I can explain," Marcus began, but Adrian laughed. "Oh, I think the girl should hear this," Adrian said silkily. "Should she know, Marcus, about the deal you made? About how you were paid, rather generously I might add, to ensure she made her way to Silvermoon? About how you were instructed to reject her at just the right moment to break her spirit enough that she'd be vulnerable?" The world tilted again. "Marcus," Sophia's voice was small, broken. The Alpha looked away. "He was my agent," Adrian continued, walking toward her with predatory grace. "A very useful tool. The werewolf who would fall in love with a girl with your bloodline, who would make her believe in fated mates and belonging, only to rip it all away. To make her desperate. To make her ready for me." Sophia's legs nearly gave out. Everything, the entire meeting, the rejection, the 3 weeks of pain, had all been orchestrated. She'd been played like an instrument. "But now," Adrian said, reaching for her again, "the pieces are all in place." The chamber exploded into chaos. The battle erupted around them in a fury of fangs and claws, of magic crackling through the air, of blood, both red and dark, splashing across the ancient stone. Sophia found herself pulled to the side by a young female vampire with kind eyes, hidden behind an overturned stone table. "Stay down," the woman hissed. "This isn't a fight you can survive." "How did the wolves find this place?" Sophia asked, her mind still reeling from Adrian's revelation. "They didn't find it." The vampire crouched beside her, her eyes following the battle with grim knowledge. "There's a spy in Adrian's court, someone who's been working against him for years. When I learned that our king had captured a girl with your bloodline, I immediately contacted the Silvermoon Alpha. I've been trying to stop Adrian's plan for the better part of a decade." Above them, Adrian moved through the chaos like a dancer, his speed and strength inhuman even by vampire standards. He was magnificent and terrible, taking down werewolves with casual precision. But Marcus was holding his own, transforming fully into his wolf form, a massive creature with silver fur and eyes that burned like molten gold. They collided in the center of the chamber, in an explosion of power that shattered the stone beneath them. "We need to get you out of here," the female vampire said, pulling Sophia toward a hidden passage. "Your bloodline is valuable to many things, many people. The moment Adrian no longer has you—" "Wait," Sophia pulled back. "What do you mean my bloodline is valuable?" The vampire hesitated. "Your father, do you know what he really was?" Sophia's throat was dry. Adrian said he was a half-blood vampire. "More than that, he was an heir to the vampire throne, cast out for his crimes. And your mother, she was a werewolf royalty from the Northern Territories, hidden away after her pack was destroyed in a war." The floor seemed to tilt beneath Sophia. "Your bloodline doesn't just make you capable of bearing a vampire child," the woman continued urgently. "It makes you capable of bridging the gap between species, something that hasn't been possible in 10,000 years. You're the key to ending the eternal war between our kinds." "I don't understand," Sophia whispered. "You will, but first—" The vampire woman gasped, her eyes going wide. Behind her, Adrian stood with his hand buried in her chest. She'd been so focused on explaining that she hadn't noticed him approach. "Thank you for your service," Adrian said coldly to the dying woman. "Even your betrayal serves my purposes, because now our girl understands the truth of her value." Sophia screamed, but Adrian was already moving toward her, his eyes burning with hunger and possession. A massive wolf blocked his path, Marcus, fully transformed, his jaws snapping with fury. They locked together in a violent dance that sent both crashing through a supporting pillar. The chamber trembled. "Run," Marcus roared, his human voice warped through the animal form. "Sophia, get out of here." She didn't think, she didn't hesitate, she ran. The passages twisted and turned, and somehow, perhaps guided by instinct, perhaps by magic responding to her mixed bloodline, she found a way out. The night air hit her face like a slap. Behind her she heard the sound of the mansion collapsing, stone crashing down in deafening succession. She ran until her legs gave out, collapsing on the side of a mountain road miles away from the estate. Her entire body shook with shock and betrayal and confusion. How long she lay there she didn't know. Time seemed to have lost meaning. Eventually, a black SUV pulled up beside her. The window rolled down, and Marcus looked at her, his face freshly scarred from the battle, his eyes filled with regret so profound it took her breath away. "I'm sorry," he said. "I need you to understand, I'm sorry." "You lied to me," Sophia said, not getting up. "You betrayed me." "Yes," he didn't try to deny it. "Adrian came to me 6 months before your 18th birthday. He offered my pack resources, protection, territory expansion, everything I'd been trying to build. All I had to do was meet a girl, be her fated mate, and reject her at the right moment." Marcus got out of the car and walked to her, kneeling down beside her. "I agreed, and I will regret it for the rest of my life, but I need you to hear this. I didn't plan to actually bond with you. I didn't plan to actually feel anything. You were supposed to be a transaction." "But you did feel something," Sophia said, seeing it in his eyes. "I felt everything," Marcus's voice broke. "I felt what it was like to be bonded to someone good, someone pure, someone who saw the best in me even when I was an instrument of betrayal. And when I rejected you, it nearly killed me. That's when I knew I had to stop Adrian." "How did you find out what he was planning?" Marcus sat back on his heels. "I didn't, not at first. But after the rejection, when the bond severed and I felt your pain like a knife in my own chest, I demanded to know what this was all about. Adrian got careless. He let slip the details of his plan to create an heir with your bloodline, to consolidate power by uniting the species through a child that could be both vampire and werewolf." "And you went to war with him," Sophia said quietly. "We all did," Marcus gestured to the remaining wolves emerging from the darkness. "Every pack that learned what he was doing. Every vampire court that discovered he was acting without their approval. He wasn't sanctioned by the Vampire Council to do any of this. He was rogue, insane, convinced that he could reshape the world through you." Sophia sat up slowly. "Is he dead?" "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "Creatures like that, they're hard to kill, but he's been dealt with. The councils on both sides have agreed to contain him. That's all we can do." Sophia looked at the wolf who'd once been her fated mate, and something shifted inside her. The anger was still there, the betrayal still raw, but underneath it was understanding. Marcus had made terrible choices, but he'd ultimately tried to make them right. "I need time," she said finally. "I need to understand who I am. I need to know about my parents, about my bloodline, about all of this." Marcus nodded. "The councils want to meet with you. They have questions, but more importantly, they have answers. They can tell you about your parents, about your heritage. And then, Marcus said carefully, you get to decide what comes next. For the first time in your life, this is your choice to make. No fated bonds, no manipulation, just you deciding your own future." Sophia considered this. The weight of expectation that had surrounded her, first as the rejected mate of a werewolf alpha, then as the captive of a vampire king, suddenly lifted. She was free, not because someone had freed her, but because she'd freed herself. "Tell me about my parents," she said. "Tell me everything." 6 months later, Sophia stood in the Grand Council chambers where both vampire and werewolf representatives gathered. She wore a dress of silver and black, and around her neck hung a pendant that contained the symbol of both her bloodlines, a moon overlaid with a star. "The proposal is this," Lord Christopher, head of the Northern Vampire Council, said, spreading his aged hands before her. "A treaty between our kinds, a formal alliance brokered by someone with your unique heritage, the first true peace between our species in recorded history." "And if I refuse?" Sophia asked. "Then we continue as we have for 10,000 years, Lord Christopher said, with suspicion, with bloodshed, with territories constantly disputed." Sophia looked at the faces gathered before her. Vampires and werewolves standing together for the first time, waiting to hear what she would decide. She thought of Marcus, who stood with his pack, his eyes filled with hope and something that might have been love, though he'd carefully never voiced it again. She thought of her mother, who'd been found alive in a vampire prison where Adrian had kept her to ensure Sophia's cooperation. She thought of the nameless women in Adrian's chamber, now freed and being rehabilitated. She thought of who she could become. "I'll do it," Sophia said quietly, "but with conditions." "Name them," Usable, the youngest vampire representative, said with a smile. "First, a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. All the crimes committed during the wars must be brought to light and addressed. Second, mixed-blood individuals like myself must have representation on this council. We are the bridge between species, and we deserve a voice. Third, any forced bonding, whether romantic or otherwise, is prohibited. All bonds must be entered into with complete knowledge and full consent." The representatives exchanged glances. These were radical demands. "And fourth," Sophia continued, her voice growing stronger, "I want to establish sanctuaries. Places where humans and supernatural creatures can live together in peace, learn about each other, fall in love if they choose to, not because fate dictates it, but because they choose it." "These are substantial demands," Lord Christopher said slowly. "Then accept none of them and find yourself another broker," Sophia said calmly. She was no longer a girl afraid of her own power. "I didn't survive rejection and captivity just to be used again. If you want my name on a peace treaty, these are the terms." The silence that followed was heavy, but it was Usable who stood first, extending her hand. "Agreed," the young vampire said. "You have my support." The first vampire stood in support of Sophia's terms, then another, then another. Marcus rose among the werewolves and they followed his lead. By the end of the meeting, Sophia's conditions had been accepted. As the representatives filed out, Marcus approached her. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" Sophia asked, watching him approach with cautious steps. "For not letting bitterness consume you, for wanting to build something better instead of just seeking revenge." "I was angry," Sophia said. "I still am, but staying angry would only give Adrian power. I won't do that." Marcus smiled sadly. "I deserve your anger." "Yes," Sophia agreed. "You do, but I'm choosing to forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve the peace that comes from letting go." She watched his face fall, realizing she wasn't forgiving him to resume their bond. She was forgiving him to move forward alone. "What will you do now?" Marcus asked. "I'm going back to school," Sophia said. "I'm going to study peace accords and supernatural law. I'm going to help build those sanctuaries, and I'm going to figure out who I am without a fated bond defining me." "Is there any chance that—" "No," Sophia said gently. "There isn't. But Marcus, I hope you find someone who loves you genuinely, not because fate dictates it, but because they choose you, every single day." Marcus nodded, and she saw him truly comprehend what she'd said, that the greatest gift he could receive was not forgiveness, but the knowledge that real love was possible, just not with her. 1 year later, Sophia opened the doors to the first sanctuary, a compound nestled in the mountains where humans and supernatural creatures lived side by side. She'd hired a staff of both kinds, had established educational programs, and had created safe spaces for people to discover their identities without judgment. She received a letter from the vampire councils informing her that Adrian had been permanently sealed in a magical prison beneath the ocean. He would live forever, conscious and aware, with no one to touch, no one to feed from, no one to dominate. It was a fitting punishment for someone who believed in nothing but control. She received another letter from Marcus, telling her he'd met someone, a human woman from the sanctuary, and that he was taking things slowly, learning what it meant to actually know someone rather than letting fate do the deciding for him. And late one evening, as Sophia was walking through the sanctuary gardens, she received a visitor she hadn't expected. "Hello," a woman said. She was striking with dark red hair and eyes that held ancient knowledge. "My name is Lilith. I'm the High Priestess of the Council of Oracles. I've been watching your progress with great interest." "That's mildly terrifying," Sophia said. Lilith smiled. "It should be. You're part of something much larger than you realize, Sophia. Adrian may have been defeated, but the forces that created his obsession with your bloodline, they're still out there. Still watching, still waiting for an opportunity." Sophia's stomach tightened. What are you saying? I'm saying that this peace you've brokered, this sanctuary you've built, it's important. It matters more than you know. But your fight isn't over. In fact, I suspect it's only just beginning. Lilith turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Sophia, that fated mate you rejected and who rejected you, he's going to be very important before this is all over, as will many others you haven't met yet. Pay attention to the bonds you're forming now, the ones you're choosing. They may be more important than fate ever was. And with that cryptic warning, the oracle disappeared into the night. Sophia stood alone in the garden, the weight of prophecy settling on her shoulders. But this time she wasn't afraid. This time she was ready. Because she'd learned the greatest truth of all, that sometimes the most important thing wasn't the bond fate gave you, but the choices you made with the freedom you claimed for yourself. She'd been rejected, she'd been captured, she'd been manipulated. But she'd also survived, she'd fought back, and she'd chosen her own path. That more than any fated bond made her truly free. Just like Sophia took control of her own destiny, you can own your storytelling journey too. Join my Patreon and get extended stories, exclusive character backstories, writing tips and creative guidance, direct access to Ask Me Anything, early access to new releases. Your support isn't just a subscription, it's becoming part of a complete storytelling universe. Start your journey at Patreon, link is in description.